Hi guys, so I'm starting a new series called Hollywood Spirituality and the Occult. We'll try to do readings with witches. Tomorrow, we had a death in the family, so my son's father passed away, so any good vibes or positive energy you can send his way would be greatly appreciated.
We all know the Hollywood sign. It is the ultimate symbol of the American dream: fame, wealth, excess. But beneath that glittering iconic surface lies one of Tinseltown's darkest and most enduring tales. They say the sign is cursed. The sign didn't always just say Hollywood. It actually started in 1923 as Hollywood Land, a giant billboard advertising a luxury real estate development on the hill. But the story of the land itself is steeped in tragedy and bad luck that some believe has placed a curse on the entire area. The curse, however, found its most heartbreaking victim in 1932, a young British actress named Peg Entwistle. Now, Peg was an incredibly talented, hopeful actress, just 24 years old, who had found quite incredible success on Broadway and came to Los Angeles chasing the biggest dream of all: movie stardom. But like so many, Hollywood chewed her up and spit her out. Her one film role was dramatically cut, and her contract was not renewed with the studio. On the night of September 16th, 1932, Peg told her uncle she was going out for a walk. Instead, she drove her car to the base of Mount Lee, climbed the rugged trail, and made her way to the back of the iconic sign, specifically the 50-foot-tall H. She climbed a workman's ladder to the top of the letter. Below her, the glittering lights of the city she'd hoped to conquer. She left behind a brief, poignant note. Peg Entwistle was the only person to ever unalive themselves from the Hollywood sign. And that's where the curse takes a rather ghostly turn. See, hikers and park rangers in Griffith Park, which surround the sign, have reported encounters that defy explanation. Some have reported a woman in vintage 1930s clothing seen wandering the trail near the sign and then vanishing. Hikers smelling a strong scent of gardenias, Peg's favorite perfume, when there are none nearby. Even when the decaying H finally toppled in the late 1940s, people claimed it was the restless spirit of Peg finally bringing the symbol of her broken dream down with her.
So now let's get on with the video. So, a lot of celebrities were related or had descendants of those who were either executed or accused of witchcraft. Betty Davis claimed to be related to a lady named, this is according to her accounts, related to a lady named Mary Bradbury, who was accused of being a witch in Salem. Sarah Jessica Parker, one of the Hocus Pocus stars, had a relative named Esther Elwood, who was also accused and imprisoned during the witch trials of 1692. Emma Watson, Harry Potter star. In Essex, England, her descendant was Joan Pleo. In England, Claire Danes had a relative accused of witchcraft, a relative named Margaret Scott, who was accused and executed of witchcraft. Zachary Levi had a relative accused of witchcraft, named Elizabeth Clausen, in the Connecticut witch trials. And of course, Jean Smart had a relative accused of witchcraft. Dorcas Hoare, arrested in a thievery ring, who was eventually convicted and executed of witchcraft. Humphrey Bogart had a relative who was also executed in the Salem witch trials, Anne Pubitor, who was also executed. Richard Greer, a descendant of Richard Vinson, who was accused and spent some time in prison due to his accusations. And also Lucille Ball is related to the same individual, Richard Vinson. Brad Pitt and Taylor Swift have links to several New England families who did not escape the trials unscathed. And of course, this is just to name a few celebrities.
I had quite a few experiences of seeing things, but I never realized that I was seeing something or hearing something that other kids didn't hear, or didn't see. I think Mommy probably got the Indian side when it come to being able to know what's going on. Because the Indians all seem to know. They live their life knowing what most of the time is going to happen tomorrow. Mommy could tell you what was going to happen 2 weeks before it happened, and everybody laugh at her, but usually when what Mommy said was going to happen really did. She told me about Doolittle, the man I married, way before it happened, and I laughed at her because I wasn't old enough to think about a man to begin with, but she told me exactly what was going to happen. And then after I got married and moved out, which I was just young when I did that, too young, but we moved. Spirits don't scare me, really. What scares me is my dreams. When I dream a bad dream, it scares me to death sometimes because I just sit and wait for something to happen. And 99% of the time, something bad will happen if I dream. And that's hard. That's hard. When I lived out in Washington, this is weird. Woke up at 4 in the morning. And I was crying. I said, I just had a bad dream. I seen where Daddy was in the coffin.
His coffin!
He said, well, go on back to sleep.
No! Daddy's dead!
And I told him, I said, no, Daddy is dead. So I got out of bed. And about 5 o'clock in the morning, the neighbor come and knocked on the door and said I needed to go to his house and take a phone call because we didn't have a telephone. And got on the phone with my sister-in-law. And she said, Loretta, you need to sit down. And I said, well, what's wrong? She said, your daddy just died. And when I got home, I told Mommy, I said, this is the suit and this is the coffin that I dreamed. You can better believe that there is something behind these dreams.
Loretta Lynn's brutal marriage to Oliver Doolittle Lynn was a hushed-up secret in country music. But in her memoir, Lynn finally revealed the worst thing he'd ever done, and it's beyond twisted. When Loretta Lynn recorded a passionate cover of the song Stand By Your Man, one thing became very clear. She was standing by one of the worst husbands fate could have thrown her. Country singer Loretta Lynn was not only a hugely successful singer-songwriter, but she was also in some very intense relationships. Her devotion to fellow singer Patsy Cline became the source for a TV movie, but it was her violent and volatile relationship with her husband that really made Hollywood take notice. Coal Miner's Daughter, the film about Lynn, became an award-season sweetheart, and it was no surprise, because her true story is just that astonishing. Loretta Lynn was born Loretta Webb in 1932 in Kentucky. She was only the Webbs' second child, but there were lots more coming after her. In fact, By the time they were through, the Webbs had 8 children. Lynn's father managed to barely put enough food on the table by working as a coal miner. But life for the Webbs was a constant struggle. There were 10 people living in the small family cabin, and winters were excessively cold. With very little money to pay to insulate the walls, Lynn's mom came up with an imaginative way to keep warm and decorate their humble abode. She glued pages from the Sears catalog to the wall to keep the cold out. You couldn't blame young Loretta if she was looking for a way out of that claustrophobic cabin, and soon a way out appeared out of nowhere. When Loretta was still a teenager, she met Oliver Vanetta Lynn, also known as Doolittle, or just Do. They met at a pie social. Loretta quickly fell for him, but according to many, he had a dark side. Everyone thought that Do was lazy and that he was running moonshine, but for Loretta, it didn't matter. Even though she was just 15, she married the 21-year-old Do. It didn't take long for Lynn to become pregnant, and for her new husband to announce a big move. Loretta Lynn and her husband left Kentucky and made their way to Washington State so her husband could work in the logging industry. Their first few children came quickly. There was Betty Sue in 1948, Jack Benny in 1949, and 2 more, Ernest Ray and Clara Marie, born in the early 1950s. Somehow, while tending to all these children, Lynn found the time to sing. But there was one thing stopping Lynn from performing. Do saw that Loretta had talent as a singer, but he also saw the major problem holding her back. She was incredibly insecure about her abilities. The first thing that Do did was go down to Sears and fork over $17 for a guitar. He then worked on Lynn's confidence. He told her over and over again that she was as good or better than the popular singers of the time. Lynn had trouble believing what her husband told her, but Do wasn't about to give up. There was a local talent show that was televised in nearby Tacoma, Washington, and Do convinced Lynn she could take home the top prize. Lynn nervously sang her heart out and made a huge impression on the judges. Strangely, the prize was not a huge sum of money or a recording contract. When Loretta Lynn netted the top prize of the talent competition, she was in for a huge disappointment. The prize was a wristwatch. It wasn't something more glamorous or that useful, but something good did come out of this experience. A Canadian man named Norm Burley noticed how lovely Lynn's voice sounded. Burley loved her voice, but he had to come up with a way to help her get famous. Burley was so inspired by Lynn's voice that he arranged for her to have a recording session down in Hollywood. He generously paid for both Lynn and Do to travel to California. When Burley heard the recording, he was so impressed that he started a recording company just for her. But Lynn and Do weren't about to leave her fate solely in Burley and Zero Records' hands. They had a plan to make sure that Lynn's song reached as many people as possible. While Burley was up in Vancouver starting Zero Records, Loretta Lynn and Do had their boots on the ground in America. Do used the postal service to send copies of the record and a picture of Lynn to radio stations all across the country. He sent 3,500 of these mail-outs, but he was in for a brutal surprise. He heard back from exactly 0 of them. So it was time for Plan B, and it was a doozy. Since using the mail hadn't worked, Loretta Lynn and Do decided to get into their car and hand-deliver copies of I'm a Honky Tonk Girl. They drove around America to every radio station they could find. Of course, because of their lack of money, staying in hotels was out of the question. They slept in their car and ate sandwiches in the park. Eventually, they ended up in Nashville, Tennessee, where things started to turn around. When they arrived in Nashville, Lynn and Do were in for a big shock. They found out that I'm a Honky Tonk Girl was a hit record. The Billboard Hot Country Songs put it at the number 14 spot. Not bad for her first record. Lynn was on the radio, and once others heard her talent, they wanted her as well. The first thing that happened once Lynn's voice was out there was that she got an invitation to tour with the Wilburn Brothers. Another invitation soon came in, and this was from Ernest Tubb, who hosted a radio show called Midnight Jamboree. The exposure on Midnight Jamboree led to a call that every country musician wants to receive. Grand Ole Opry is a radio show dedicated to country music, and is now America's longest running broadcast. Loretta Lynn got the call to perform, and this was something huge. Grand Ole Opry gives its stars amazing exposure, and the future looked bright for Lynn. Of course, now she had the task of writing songs. Well, she didn't have to look very far for inspiration. You see, her marriage was no walk in the park. Dew had a temper, and he did scary things like smashing a jar against the wall in the middle of a fight. But it didn't stop there. Dew also hit Lynn. Before you feel too sorry for her, you need to know that Lynn wasn't the type to take this lying down. She later said she hit him back twice for every time he hit her. One time, even with a skillet of creamed corn. But there was one episode where Lynn went too far. During one of their spectacular fights, Loretta Lynn hit Dew so hard that she heard his teeth land on the floor. Lynn had an intense fear that Dew would be so angry that he'd do serious damage. Instead of getting revenge, Dew just started laughing. The one positive thing about their marriage was that it gave Lynn lots to write about. It seemed that Lynn just needed a friend to confide in. Well, she was about to meet the best friend a woman could ask for. In 1961, Loretta Lynn got the opportunity of a lifetime. She was going to sing I Fall to Pieces on the radio. This was a song made famous by Lynn's hero, Patsy Cline. Cline was at home recovering from a car accident, and she heard Lynn singing her song. Cline liked what she heard. A lot. She liked it so much that she sent her husband to the studio to invite Lynn to her house. When they met, they got on like a house on fire. Lynn and Cline became very close, and Cline even helped pay for things like drapes for Lynn's house. Lynn also later said that Cline gave her an odd gift. She gave her her old underwear. Obviously, they were close. Close enough to inspire a TV movie called Patsy and Loretta. Lynn had found a kind soul in Cline, but some of the others she met in the industry were ready to take advantage of her. Loretta Lynn was now recording under the Wilburn Brothers Publishing Company, and they had even helped her move from Zero Records to more influential Decca Records. But there was a dark side to that deal. Lynn was horrified to discover that the publishing company insisted that they now owned all of her music. She had to spend the next 30 years fighting to be owner of her own music. In spite of her fighting, Lynn still had time for success. Even though Loretta Lynn was fighting with Wilburn Brothers, it didn't stop her from succeeding with Decca Records. In fact, her first single with the label even had Success as its title. This song sat on the Billboard Hot Country Western and Sides chart for an amazing 16 weeks, and she followed it up with more and more hits. There was only one problem. Lynn wasn't writing any of these hit songs. It wouldn't be until after Lynn gave birth to twins that she would have a song that she wrote become a hit. This was Dear Uncle Sam, and it told the story of a woman saying goodbye as her husband goes to Vietnam to fight for his country. The lyrics stunned the country and Western crowd, as they'd never heard such a serious topic in a song. Audiences loved Dear Uncle Sam, but there was something even bigger coming her way. Just 2 years after giving birth to her twins, something surprising happened. Lynn actually became a grandmother at the age of 34. By this time, her oldest daughter was 18 years old, and she had her first child in 1966. Lynn's family was growing quickly, and she needed a big place to house everyone. In 1966, Loretta Lynn and Dew came across a ranch they liked and were eager to buy it. But there was a strange catch that came with the purchase. If they bought this rundown ranch, they would also be buying the entire town of Hurricane Mills, Tennessee. Lynn and Dew knew it was a big decision, but they decided to dive right in and buy up the entire town. Lynn, the proud owner of Hurricane Mills, was ready to start handing out advice. Loretta Lynn was backstage before a performance and met a woman who told her that she was afraid that she was losing her husband to his mistress. Lynn's simple advice was, "Honey, she ain't woman enough to take your man." The sentence stayed with Lynn, and when she had a moment, she wrote a song that would change her life. Lynn penned the song, "You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man," and it was so popular that it handed Lynn a first. With this song, she was the first country female recording artist to write a #1 hit. It seemed that there was no limit to what Lynn could do. Well, there was one thing. She still couldn't fix her own marital problems. Du was fooling around with women left, right, and center, but one really got under Lynn's skin. So, Lynn wrote a letter to this mistress. When Du found out, he got angry and told Lynn to mind her own business. Then he went a cruel step further. He told Lynn that he didn't love her anymore. This was something that hurt Lynn to the core, and she took to songwriting to heal herself. Loretta Lynn had it with her husband's fooling around and took the matter into her own hands. In 1968, Lynn wrote a song called Fist City. This was a warning to all the women that her husband was fooling around with. If they wanted to mess around with her husband, they would get a sound beating. It didn't take long for Lynn's unorthodox lyrics to get her into trouble, however. While one critic called Fist City the greatest song title of all time, others found the subject matter controversial. Lynn was clearly speaking her truth, but it was too much for many radio stations, and this song received a ban. Lynn's real life was too hard for radio listeners, and it was even harder than most knew. Not only did Du cheat on Lynn, but he also had a problem with the bottle. When Lynn came home from a tour, she never knew what state she would find her husband in. She later admitted that some days she didn't even want to return home at all. Next in line for Lynn was even more heartache. Lynn's friendship with Patsy Cline was epic, but it also had a sense of doom. You see, Cline had confided that she didn't think she would live a very long life. This gruesome premonition came true in 1963 when Cline tragically passed in a plane crash. In one night, Lynn had lost her best friend and her mentor. Luckily, Lynn had learned a great deal from Cline, and she was ready to take on America. The 70s were the decade for Lynn, and she amassed a huge fan base. She became so popular with women that Procter & Gamble hired her to sell one of their most iconic products, Crisco shortening. By the end of the 1970s, the Academy of Country Music named her the Artist of the Decade. She was the first woman to hold this honor. Lynn was at the top of her game, and Hollywood noticed. In 1980, Lynn was famous enough to have a movie made based on her life. Lynn was very excited about the project, and happily announced on a talk show that Carrie star Sissy Spacek would be playing her in Coal Miner's Daughter. There was just one problem. Spacek hadn't agreed to be in the film. Spacek had been avoiding deciding whether to appear in Coal Miner's Daughter, and had even tried to scare the producers off by insisting she would sing the songs herself. One major hurdle for Spacek was the fact that she didn't even like country music. Lynn really wanted Spacek to say yes, so the pressure was on. Spacek eventually came to her decision in an unorthodox way. Loretta Lynn had picked Spacek herself for the role, and the producers had even fired a director who didn't want her in the lead. Spacek prayed about the decision, and then got an answer from God. When she was listening to a car radio, suddenly, a coal miner's daughter came through the speakers. But that's not the weirdest part. She was listening to a classical music station at the time. Spacek said yes, and began her rather unorthodox preparation for the role. Once Spacek had agreed to play Lynn, her first decision was to follow Lynn around everywhere. You see, Spacek quickly became obsessed with getting Lynn's mannerisms down right, and watched her carefully both on and off the stage. But Spacek wasn't the only actor to nail their part in this film. One day, when Lynn was visiting the set of Coal Miner's Daughter, she thought she saw a ghost. But it wasn't a ghost, it was just the man who was playing her father. As it turned out, the hair and makeup people did such a great job of turning Levon Helm into Lynn's father that she almost fainted when she saw him. Sadly, Du wasn't quite as happy with the other actor playing him. When Lynn's husband Du heard that Tommy Lee Jones was going to portray him in the movie, he didn't have any intention of even meeting the actor. That's when Jones did something outrageous. He went full method. Jones got himself some moonshine and drove a jeep through town, completely inebriated. The local sheriff took him to the station, where they beat him up for resisting arrest. His gambit worked. This pleased Du, and he and Jones became friends. When Coal Miner's Daughter did eventually reach theaters, the reception was nothing short of astonishing. It reached number 1 at the box office, taking in $3.6 million on its opening weekend. The critics also loved it, and when award season came around, it got 7 Oscar nominations and 4 Golden Globes. Spacek won both the Oscar and Golden Globe and a slew of other awards. Lynn's life story had taken Hollywood by storm, so she turned around and did something completely un-Hollywood to follow it up. In 1981, motocross race promoter Dave Coombs came across Lynn's ranch and had an idea. He was looking for an out-of-the-way location for a national motocross race and asked if Lynn would have an interest in hosting the event. Lynn gave an enthusiastic thumbs up, and the event has been held there ever since. Sadly, the ranch is also a source of sorrow for Lynn. In July of 1984, Lynn's son, Jack Benny, went for a horseback ride at his mother's ranch. When he came to Duck River, he decided to try and cross it on horseback. What happened next was one of the worst tragedies in Lynn's life. Jack Benny drowned in the river that day. When this happened, Lynn wasn't at home. She was dealing with her own catastrophe. As it turned out, Loretta Lynn was actually in the hospital when Jack Benny had his accident. Lynn had been on tour, and she was suffering from extreme exhaustion. While she was recovering at the hospital, she had to deal with the news of her son's passing. Sadly, Lynn would soon be spending even more time in hospitals. Du's hard-living lifestyle eventually took its toll on him. He had heart surgery in 1992. Then his fight with diabetes led to a stunning announcement from his doctor. They were going to have to remove both of his legs. Even though Lynn had a thriving and money-making career, she put it all on hold to take care of her husband. Sadly, her care wasn't enough. 5 days before he turned 70, Du passed. Lynn's life with Du had been full of love and trauma. She confessed that without Du, she would not have had a musical career at all. Now she was all alone, and it was going to be really hard to adjust to her new solitary life. Lynn needed a way to deal with her sorrow, and she knew exactly what to do. When Lynn looked back at getting married so young, she realized that she went directly from taking orders from her dad to taking them from her husband. But she missed him, and for many years she said she thought she saw him everywhere. To deal with her loss, Lynn turned to songwriting. She wrote I Can't Hear the Music as a tribute to Du. What Lynn needed now was to try and stay young. She found it in a remarkable way. In 2004, when any other 72-year-old would have been contemplating retirement, Lynn was working with a young musician. This was the White Stripes' Jack White, who produced and performed on her 42nd album, which was called Van Leer Rose. This late-in-her-life album managed to reach the number 2 spot on the US Billboard Top Country Albums. Younger musicians had a great respect for Lynn. Loretta Lynn's tempestuous and occasionally violent marriage to Oliver Doolittle Lynn was an open secret in country music. But in her autobiography, she revealed the worst thing he'd ever done to her. In the midst of one of his many affairs, he told her he was leaving her when she was giving birth to one of their sons.
In Van Leer, Kentucky, where country singer Loretta Lynn was born, coal mining towns were quite popular during that time. A coal mining town would consist of the coal mining company owning an entire town, and every cent of employees' earnings would in turn go back into the town. The companies would own the home, the school, the general store, which in turn managed to keep all employees essentially in poverty. Medical necessities, medical treatment weren't commonplace or something easy to attain. There was one story that Loretta Lynn had to have an ear operation as a child, and her mother had to walk 10 miles there and back to the hospital to be with Loretta. Loretta Lynn, country music star, who married at 13, but according to county records, was married at 15. So, in my opinion, there could have been a little mathematical error on that for legal purposes. Although girls getting young that age during that time would not have been an uncommon situation. She was the one of 7 siblings born in Van Leer, Kentucky, during the coal mining operation era. She was born Loretta Webb in 1932.
Most people know the story of country music legend Loretta Lynn, from her humble beginnings of growing up poor in the hills of Kentucky to becoming the first lady of country music. With her fame, she would go on to purchase a beautiful, massive 3-story plantation house that was built in 1876. But along with that house came some spirits who weren't quite ready to leave. Welcome to Ghosts of Tennessee, and this is the haunted Loretta Lynn Ranch. The first lady of country music was born April 14, 1932 in Butcher Holler, Kentucky. She was the oldest daughter and second child born to Clara Marie Ramey and Melvin Theodore Webb. Her song, Coal Miner's Daughter, tells the story of her childhood and was even made into a movie. On January 10, 1948, 15-year-old Loretta would marry Oliver Vanetta Doolittle Lynn, better known as Doolittle, Doo, or Mooney. At the time, they had only known each other for a month. But Loretta always told the story of how her mother, who was Cherokee, had visions and had told her she had seen Loretta marrying Mooney. The Lynns left Kentucky and moved to Custer, Washington when Lynn was 7 months pregnant, was the first of their 6 children. The happiness and heartache of her early years of marriage would help to inspire her songwriting. And in 1953, Mooney bought her a $17 harmony guitar, and with his encouragement, she taught herself to play. Then, in February 1960, she cut her first record, I'm a Honky Tonk Girl, which reached number 14 on Billboard's Hot Country Songs chart, a song that she wrote on a paper bag while working as a strawberry picker, and from there, her star was on the rise. In 1966, she and her husband were traveling the area outside Nashville looking for a new home. The pair got lost and stumbled upon the massive 3-story plantation house that was built in 1876. Loretta, thinking that it minded her of Gone with the Wind, fell in love with it and told her husband she was going to buy that house. Mooney found out who owned it. Papers were signed, and with that, the home was theirs. But it came with a catch. They had to buy the whole town of Hurricane Mills. The home would require extensive renovations, which Mooney started working on while Loretta was on tour, and in 1967, the family was able to move in. But almost immediately, strange things started to happen. During the renovations, it was discovered that a slave pit existed under the front porch of the plantation house, with bars along the top and chains and hooks down the inside. Pits such as this were used as a form of punishment for slaves who broke their master's rules. The family members had all reported hearing at different times what sounded like chains rattling and groans coming from the pit. Late one night, Loretta was watching television with a friend when she saw and heard someone walk across the porch. After the second time, Lynn started to wonder who was out there. It was then that she heard the chains rattling in the slave pit. After hearing this, she knew that it had been a ghost on her porch. Loretta herself said on most nights she would hear footsteps in high heels walking up and down the back stairs. She would tell Mooney and he would swear he didn't hear anything and tell her just to go back to sleep. Her twin girls, Patsy and Peggy, claimed to see a woman in white standing by their bed every night. She was dressed in old-fashioned clothes and wore her hair swept up. Her son, Jack Benny, reported one incident of paranormal activity that he had experienced at Hurricane Mills. He came home after a night of drinking and fell asleep lying on his stomach in the brown room. He was awakened to someone in an old Civil War uniform trying to pull off his boots. His dog was growling at the figure and jumped right through him. The incident scared him so much that he jumped up and ran out of the room. He fell all the way down the stairs, and afterward, Jack and his brother Ernest refused to sleep in the room. It's now also off limits to visitors, and it's the only room in the house where outsiders aren't allowed to go. One day, her mother came to visit. Loretta was excited and couldn't wait to show her mother how far she had come, but it would be the one and only time her mother would step foot on the property. Her mother had a chilling vision. She begged her to move away and told her that one of her children would drown there someday. Loretta, not wanting to believe her mother, thought that she might be wrong with the prediction this time. Besides, all her children could swim. In July of 1984, while Loretta was sick in the hospital, she dreamed that her son Jack had died. When she awakened the next morning, her husband was walking into her hospital room to tell her that Jack had drowned at Hurricane Mills the night before. He had been attempting to cross the Duck River on horseback, and his horse had become frightened for some reason and had thrown him into the river. Then, there are the framed album covers that Loretta hung on the walls of the stairwell. No matter how many times she straightened them, they were always found turned sideways and crooked. So much so that Loretta told everyone not to touch them anymore. One day, while giving a tour, one of the tour guides was standing beside the album covers and went to straighten one when a tourist asked, "Who was that man standing at the top of the stairs?" There, at the top of the stairs, was the full apparition of a man, dressed in old-timey clothes with a look of anger on his face. The tour guide almost fell down the stairs to get away and vowed she'd never touch the album covers again. Loretta believes that the male entity is the spirit of James Anderson, a former owner of the home. Then, late one fall afternoon, Loretta arrived home at the house and saw a woman dressed in white standing on the balcony. She was crying, wringing her hands, and when she walked inside and asked her housekeeper about the woman, she discovered there wasn't anyone else in the house. After doing some research and seeing pictures of the former residents, Loretta believes that the woman in white is Beulah Anderson. Her baby had died, and Beulah had mourned herself to death at Hurricane Mills shortly thereafter. Beulah and the baby are both buried on the grounds. Psychic medium Kim Russo has also visited the old plantation and agrees with Loretta. Sadly, on October 4, 2022, at the age of 90, the iconic legend would pass peacefully in her sleep. Her voice that's once sang to millions, forever silenced. Her ranch is still open to the public, and it is one of the top tourist attractions in Tennessee. And although others have claimed to feel and see spirits around Hurricane Mills, none have yet to claim to see the spirit of Loretta. But who knows? Anything is possible. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed it, give me a like, follow, and a share. Thank you.
During her fame, her early fame, when she sang songs about domestic violence, birth control, women's rights, quite a few of her songs were banned from the radio. Some of her songs were in fact written, inspired by not only the domestic violence and infidelity and alcoholism that she suffered, but listening to the suffering of other women. So in the late 1940s, 50s, 60s, Loretta was one of the first women to, in the celebrity establishment, to start advocating for and talking about issues concerning women. Loretta often sung about her struggles growing up in the coal mines in Kentucky, in a place, as she put it, known as Butcher Holler. Some things that were depicted in the 1970s movie The Coal Miner's Daughter. As I said, she was the youngest of 7 siblings. But the interesting thing about her family life, her mother and grandmother, who she often spoke of in interviews, but as she was descended from the Cherokee indigenous tribe, Appalachian magic was quite commonplace. This was something that Loretta had discussed in interviews, especially when it came to situations with her husband. She had said in several interviews that as young as 9, that Loretta could often see spirits within the home, on the properties as well as adjacent properties, to the point where she felt that this was normal and commonplace and everyone could do this. Now, her sister Crystal Gale, who was 20 years younger than Loretta, never spoke on such matters or acknowledged the fact that she had these abilities also, but the abilities had been handed down within the family line. Her grandmother was a healer and would often use home remedies and Appalachian remedies. Her mother was a psychic, possibly clairvoyant, and she often predicted things. She predicted the marriage of Loretta to her husband Doolittle, or Do as he was called often, who was in fact a military veteran, but the mother refused to even attend the wedding of her daughter and refused to sign the papers. The father attended and did sign the necessary papers. The mother had predicted that the marriage would not be a prosperous nor loving marriage for Loretta as depicted in the movie. But during their married life, Loretta had acquired an ability to, through dreams, be able to predict situations. When she and her husband he had thrown her out of the house, she often spoke about going around the property and in the woods to find 4-leaf clovers to put in the passage of the Bible that said that this too shall come to pass, meaning that she would be reunited with her husband. Upon their move to Washington, I'm sorry about the dog. Upon their move to Washington, Loretta had a dream that she...
So Loretta Lynn was recording at Johnny Cash's old cabin studio in Tennessee, right? She's laying down tracks for one of his songs, When Things Get Weird. She swears the man in black himself showed up, not like walked through the door, but his spirit was there in the room with her. She said it felt like he was guiding her through the session, helping her get it just right. Now, whether you believe in ghosts or not, imagine being alone in that legendary studio, surrounded by Cash's legacy and feeling his presence. Loretta was convinced it happened. She told this story multiple times, and honestly, if anyone's ghost is going to hang around their studio, it's Johnny Cash. That cabin must have some serious energy. Would you record there?
That she had seen her father lying in a coffin. Of course, again, this was depicted in a small scene in Coal Miner's Daughter. And her husband, of course, assured her, and they were then later contacted by a neighbor who had Loretta go to their home and call her sister-in-law. And in fact, her father had passed away. They drove back to Kentucky to attend the funeral, and her father was in the coffin, the same suit, tie, that Loretta had, of course, seen in her dream. She had often spoke about predicting things in her dreams and seeing spirits. She even talked about her best friend Patsy Cline, who would often come to her in dreams and offer her guidance on situations and matters that Loretta often would have issues about people to stay away from, any type of record or financial situations, anything Loretta was confused on. Patsy would come to her in dreams and offer her any type of advice. Now, in 1984, sadly enough, she had been hospitalized on tour due to illness, and as she was in her medically induced on medication, resting, she did see the death of one of her sons, known as Jack. He had fallen from a horse and was knocked into the river, knocked unconscious, and he had drowned on their Hurricane Mills property.
Did you know that Johnny Cash's spirit came to visit Loretta Lynn? Now, Loretta Lynn was known for her clairvoyant abilities that were seemingly passed down from her mother's side of the family. She knew that her father had passed away before receiving the news due to a dream, and often told the tales of seeing spirits at her Hurricane Mills plantation home. She saw a woman dressed in white crying on her balcony, and there were encounters with the ghosts of Civil War soldiers. But one day, Loretta got a visit from the spirit of a friend, Johnny Cash. Loretta was in the recording studio and was actually being produced by Johnny and June's son, John Carter Cash, and she was recording one of Johnny's songs. Loretta looked up and saw a man in a gray suit walk through the door. Loretta said that it appeared to be her old friend, Johnny Cash. The spirit disappeared, and Loretta said, "I could have swore I just saw Johnny Cash walk through the door." Here's Loretta telling the story in her own words. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like and the follow. I appreciate y'all.
I was recording one of Johnny's songs, Johnny Cash, and I looked up and I thought that I seen this gray suit come in, and it looked like Johnny. Of course, when you're recording and it's dark kind of in the studio, I quit singing. I said, I would have swore I seen Johnny Cash walking through that door, So we stopped and then we talked a little while and then started back to singing.
In 1963, Loretta had written the song inspired by her friend Patsy Cline. Shortly around the time of Patsy Cline's tragic plane accident, she had written the song called This Haunted House. Now, in 1966, 3 years after the song and Patsy Cline's tragic death, she and her husband were house hunting in Nashville, and they wanted a place that was rather secluded and out of the way. They came upon a house in an area known as Hurricane Mills. They even slept on the porch in order to wait to get someone to come to the house. The house, as she put it, reminded her of the movie Gone with the Wind. Eventually, during the sale, they found out that it was not just the house that they had purchased, but the entire town of Hurricane Mills, which included several buildings, a post office, a mill, which she and her husband did eventually renovate and make as a tourist site, complete with a reenactment of a coal mine, a Native American museum, a Loretta Lynn museum, and the cabin from the movie Coal Miner's Daughter was brought to the property and reassembled for Loretta and for the tourists. And after looking at some of the history of the property, finding out that the property was converted into a dude ranch also, but at looking at some of the history of the property, they found that the town was in fact an old plantation, and it was also a Civil War hospital during the Civil War, and Civil War battles had taken place on and near the grounds. Of course, Loretta, being able to see some of these spirits, had several interactions. A woman on a balcony pacing back and forth, apparently grieving the death of her child. She had several interactions with a man known as Mr. Anderson, who at one point had owned the property and guarded the property before her son Jack's death. He had described an incident where he had came home tired, laid on the bed completely clothed, and he woke to Civil War soldiers pulling off his boots. I guess this was a month or two before Jack's accident, where he died. Several of the daughters had spoken about incidents within the home. Psychics and paranormal investigators, as well as historians, have come to the property several times in order to do investigations on the property. After the children had grown and moved on, Loretta and her husband did build a smaller home where they lived until Dew's passing and then Loretta's eventual passing. But it's rather sad because Loretta had such abilities, and it could have been something had she had the ability and the training in order to really help and do good for others. But then again, this is another case of traditional witchcraft as well as Appalachian conjure. So that's it for the first episode, guys. Peace, love, and light. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And thanks a lot, guys.